warriors, and welcome to another episode of Chevrons, the podcast on the enlisted force. I'm Chief Master Sgt. Sean Sullivan.
And I'm A1C Francesca Scridulis. Today we are excited to chat with Chief Master Sergeant Kevin Myers, the First Sergeant Functional Area Manager for the Air National Guard.
We also have Staff Sgt. Michelle Princi, who is a member of the 101st Intelligence Group, and also a longtime friend of mine, somebody who I was acquainted with for a very long time before she joined the Air National Guard. And I always like to have sub-stories when we start these things. Chief Myers and I go back to our days when we were both first sergeants, and we had a really, really great mentor in Chief Kitzmiller, who we've also interviewed. And Michelle Princi was one, I think you were the oldest person we had at the 102nd to ever go through basic military training and to enter the Air Force because of your call for service, if I'm not mistaken. So with that said, we're going to give it up to you guys. Tell us a little bit about yourself, your military story, and what your current positions are. And I am going to start with Staff Sergeant Princi.
Thanks, sir. That's actually a pretty funny story. I did not know that I had that honor, so I guess thank you for that. I got a late start on my military and law enforcement career. So I started when I was 36 at the Mashpee PD. And then about a year later, I finally was able to get into the Air Force. So I joined the Air Force in 2015 at 37. I went to BMT a year later at 38. I was fortunate enough to graduate second out of the 650 airmen there. I missed out by top grad by half a point. So I think I should have probably tried to find a few of my 341s that were floating around and submit those, but a little too late. I was the dorm chief there for my flight 292. And then let's see, it was about a year and a half after that I was able to go to tech school. Being a little older, obviously the background check took a little bit longer. So I got my clearance, and then about 6 or 8 months later, I ended up at tech school. I got Airman of the Month, my second month there, August, I think, of 2017, and then came back, did my mess orders. I was fortunate enough to get selected to attend ALS in residency. So I attended that in November of 2019. I was really blessed to be chosen as the Levito winner for my class, when really probably like half the class could have earned that. And I just boarded for tech sergeant at the December drill, and Major Pimentel's Christmas card said he looks forward to promoting me in 2022. So sounds good. I guess we'll wait to see what happens on paper. Yeah. I'm an Intel analyst. I did about 6 months of orders on the last MOB, and I just transferred PDs in April to be back at my hometown, and hopefully I'll do well in the sergeant's process there next year.
Excellent. Chief Myers, same question, sir. Tell us about yourself, your military story, and what your current position is.
Wow. So I don't know if my story can follow Sergeant Princi's story. You should let me go first, Chief Sullivan, because my story does not compare at all to that, right? But I'll give it a shot and share my story. So I enlisted in the Mississippi Air National Guard in 1998. I joined as a personnelist. Didn't fare so well in that career field. I guess it was more challenging than I thought it would be. At that time when I got in, I was a sophomore in college. So I had the opportunity to attend the University of Pittsburgh and go to graduate school. So I then transferred to the university. Not the university, but to the Pennsylvania Air National Guard in 2000, and cross-trained over into the aviation resource management career field. It was called something different then. It was the squadron operations, SOSM, and so switched over career fields and had a really good supervisor / trainer to help me really understand what getting in the military was about. But I'll tell you, getting into the military was a little bit of I was a little bit of an odd duck because as a young college student, you're enticed by all of these credit card companies that are on campus, right? And so I got in literally because I got a credit card my freshman year of college and ran the limit over $1,000 and didn't have the courage to tell my parents about it. And so I had a friend who was in the Air National Guard, and he is the reason why I got in the military because of that credit card. So unique reason to join the military and to still be in this long. But spent some time in the Pennsylvania Air National Guard and went back to the Mississippi Air National Guard in 2005, again in the aviation resource management career field, and became a first sergeant in 2013. Through some mentorship, some senior officers and senior NCOs reached out to me and said, "Hey, I think you might fare well at this opportunity." And so became a first sergeant in 2013 and spent about 18 months as the wing first sergeant at the 172nd Airlift Wing there in Jackson, Mississippi. Actually took the diamond off. As we're all supposed to as diamond wearers, took the diamond off for literally 8 months. And during that 8-month process, the senior master sergeant, first sergeant position at the Air National Guard Readiness Center became vacant. And I applied for that opportunity and got selected in 2018. And so I got to the Readiness Center in 2018 as a senior master sergeant, first sergeant. And then, just as you said, Chief Sullivan, one of our mutual mentors, Chief Master Sergeant, now retired, Lorene Kitzmiller, was the functional manager, the A&G functional manager for first sergeants at that point in time. And she got selected to be a command chief out in California. And I interviewed for her position and got selected. And I've been in the first sergeant functional manager position / command first sergeant position since April 1st of 2020. And so here I am today having the opportunity to have a conversation with you all.
That's awesome. I'm just gonna quickly, for people who don't know, what is first sergeant and what's first sergeant functional area manager?
Yeah, so it's very odd. That's a great question because I don't consider myself a frontline first sergeant anymore. As the command first sergeant, so there are 14 or 15 diamond chiefs across the total force, Air Force. And so as the command first sergeant / functional manager, I oversee the training, utilization, development, deployments, health, welfare, morale of 880 first sergeants in the Air National Guard. As a component, we have the largest number of first sergeants behind active duty, only because when you combine all of the commands in active duty, such as ACC, AFMC, AMC, when you combine all of the MAJCOMs in active duty, they surpass us by maybe 500 or 600. But we have the largest number of first sergeants, and so I oversee a lot of training and development, like I said, for all 880 first sergeants, to include the additional duty first sergeants as well.
Wow. I'm not sure about you, Staff Sergeant Princi, but kind of when I was looking you up, Sir Chief, I was kind of curious as far as overseeing the training. And Chief Sullivan, you can speak to this too, what do chiefs and first sergeants go through to get those positions? Like, do they have to do like a boot camp thing? Do they get specific courses on how to handle, like the mentorship and like conflict stuff? Like, what do they go through?
Yeah, and Chief Sullivan, being a former diamond wearer, he can definitely chime in and fill in the gaps where I may miss some points. But it all starts with the process of grooming and developing our NCOs, right? So, hopefully Sergeant Princi will maybe consider being a first sergeant one day as we're having this conversation about first sergeants, right? Because it literally starts at that level, staff sergeant, senior airman, staff sergeant, tech sergeant, when we should be developing that next level, that next wave or generation of first sergeants. So it really starts with that mentoring process way before our, potential tech sergeants who are promotable master sergeants get to the point where they're either being encouraged or pushed or motivated or volunteering to become a first sergeant. And once they go through that selection process, they attend First Sergeant Academy, which is at Gunner Air Force Base there in Montgomery, Alabama, to go through that formal training and development portion of what they are now going to be faced with as first sergeants back in their squadrons, back in their wings and or states. So it really starts there, to be honest with you, way before someone is selected to become a first sergeant or is a candidate. It starts at that staff sergeant, tech sergeant level for us to begin to groom and develop those individuals to be potential candidates and or applicants to wear the diamond.
And that's absolutely the key, is it comes down to having that mentorship in an airman's early developmental period, because exactly what a first sergeant is and what a first sergeant can be is the sky's the limit. And I know that Chief Myers and I, both floating around the 90, have seen first sergeants utilized in a multitude of ways, some good, some bad, mostly good. But the whole role of the first sergeant is it's a key leadership position, and a first sergeant is a force multiplier. So it's important for these frontline supervisors to turn around and identify their airmen young and early and provide them with incentive and opportunity to develop themselves. And positions like an additional duty first sergeant are ideal for that as a stepping stone and getting into being a diamond wearing first sergeant. For those of you out there who want to check my bio, I've had a very, very diverse military career. 3 branches of the service: enlisted officer, enlisted, helicopter pilot, sniper, this, that, the other thing. It's all out there. Kind of like reads like a catalog of jobs in the military. But the best job I have ever had in my entire military career, except being the state command chief, of course, was being a first sergeant. It was the most rewarding, selfless thing I did to give back to the military and to my airmen. And I loved every second of it. And as much as I enjoy my new position, there are days where I really miss that diamond. So, and this is going to bring us to that mentorship thing. And I want to start with you, Staff Sergeant Princi. What are your thoughts on mentorship, and what has it meant to you throughout your military and your civilian career?
If I could, before I answer that, I was just going to piggyback on what you said about taking off the diamond. I would argue to say that people who make the best first sergeants never really take it off. They always sort of had it on. You can pick them out in the units before they actually rise up to that specific position. But it's sort of something that you can see in them, even when they first get into the unit, whether they're helping out and encouraging other people within their flights. I'm part of the F flight, which now just became E flight. And, everybody in our unit and in our flight is always helping each other, keep up with their readiness and, help what they need to do to get promoted and things like that. So I think it's just sort of something that's, kind of ingrained in you, and you're just doing it all the time, whether or not you're actually wearing the star. So
Well said.
Yeah. So mentorship for me, I've been really fortunate enough. I know it's sort of biased to have you on the call and me on the call with you, but you've been a mentor to me since day one. And I've had other mentors in the police department as well as the Air Force, and then just life in general. And it's sort of one of those things that's like, it just sort of happens and evolves along the way. It's sort of like Simon Sinek will say, like, you don't just walk up to somebody and ask them to be your friend, right? Because that's weird. So you don't just walk up to somebody and ask them, will you mentor me? It's sort of something that's built along the way, and it becomes sort of mutually beneficial, because whenever I had questions for you, Chief Sullivan, you're always there to answer them. You always took my call. You always answered my text. You always had, good answers, whether or not I really wanted to hear them or not. And it grew through that way. And then you've introduced me to other people along the way who have also become mentors to me as well. So one, I would just say that it's something that has to kind of happen naturally. It evolves along the way. And I would say the biggest thing is it's mutually beneficial for both people, that as they continue, they introduce the mentor, the mentee to other people that will also help them in their careers along the way.
That was well said. And before I flip this over to Chief Myers, I just want to add one caveat onto that. For it, a really good mentor-mentee relationship does work both ways, because all three of you as individuals, Airman Skrdulis, Staff Sergeant Princi, and Chief Myers, I have learned from all three of you. Mentorship is relationship, and for everything that you put out, you get something back in return. I appreciate your comments. Staff Sergeant Princi, that you didn't have to go down that rabbit hole, but I do appreciate it. But I want you to know that I got as much from you as you've probably gotten from me. So, Chief Myers, same question. What are your thoughts on it, and what has it meant to you throughout your military career?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you as we're having this conversation. For me, mentorship has been the greatest difference in my entire military career. Getting in, for the initial reasons that I did, right? Because I got a credit card in college, didn't have the courage to ask my parents for $1,000 to help me pay it off. And so I joined the military because I had a friend, right? So just having that friend to say, and he really didn't know either. But I will tell you, it's made the difference because I initially only wanted to do 6 years and out, right? Give me my GI Bill, give me my drill check, and, I'll pay this credit card off and I'm done. However, there were people who crossed my path very early on in my career, specifically, and I'm gonna give a shout out to Master Sgt. Retired Mayumi Pesta. And she became my supervisor after I left the Mississippi Air National Guard the first time and moved to Pennsylvania. But I wasn't a good airman, to be honest with you. And as we're having this conversation, my sole focus was college, right? College student, trying to, academics, and be well prepared for that. And so I was having a lot of challenges, specifically when I moved to Pennsylvania, to be a productive airman, to come in and add value on drill weekends. And so I'll tell you, she stood about 5 feet, right? If that, maybe 4'11". But man, she held me accountable every drill, right? When I got there, I couldn't even remember my password to log in every drill, right? Every 30 days. That's how unaware or incompetent I was, and what my role and responsibilities and how I played a part in that air refueling wing's mission, right? And so even just her holding me accountable, between drills and every time I showed up, hey, Kevin, what's your login? Hey, Kevin, here's what I need you to do. Here's what we're going to work on this week. And that literally was the catapult for me, changing my thought perspective of I'm not just showing up on drill weekend to get a paycheck and get my GI Bill deposited, in my account every month that I'm a full-time student. But she literally reshaped my thought process simply by holding me accountable every drill that I showed up, that we were going to accomplish something to increase my knowledge, to enhance my skills, to make me a better airman than what I was when I showed up. And then it just grew from there, right? And so now next month will be 24 years in the military for me. And over that 24 years, the different individuals that have now crossed my path to help me, pour into me, plant in me, encourage me. But it literally started with Master Sgt. Mayumi Pesta, who, held me accountable and mentored me as a young senior airman to get to where this point I am today.
That's amazing. I really appreciate the openness and willingness to share that. Just like even the fact that you joined because of the credit card thing. Because sometimes, and my biggest fear when we started this program was that some of the bigger chiefs and guests that we have would not be willing to be like human. Like they just want to say all the right stuff. So like I was a bad airman. I was just in it for college. I mean, that's cool. I relate to that right now. And so thank you for that. Staff Sergeant Princi, you really sounded like you have had first sergeants and mentors in your life Can you tell me, is there any particular experience or something good or bad that they've helped you or they've made you like, that's not how I want to do things, you know?
Well, I've been really spoiled because my first shirts are uh, Gail, who just got an award for being basically like the best first shirt ever. And now, and now we have Lindsay and Fournier, and those guys are awesome. And like I said earlier, I mean, it just suits them. They've been sort of acting in those capacities as airmen and leaders within their units prior to getting appointed to those positions. And when they get selected to be there, you're kind of like, yeah, that makes sense. Like that person should be there. They're always helping and looking out for other people. I've just been fortunate enough, to, with my mentors, I was in a police department that really didn't suit me and my personality. And so it's a tough decision to, then say, okay, I'm going to leave this place, like the devil that right, is better than the devil you don't, and pick up after 7 years and go to a new department and become a rookie in that department, essentially low man on the totem pole, and they don't really care what you did anywhere else. And so while I was on orders last year, I got the opportunity to apply to my hometown PD, and I was fortunate enough to be selected, and they graciously let me continue my military orders and then held the position for me until I completed those. So in April of this year, I started at a new PD, new town, definitely different challenges of the types of police work that we do in that town. And so I just leaned on, mentors I have within the police community for advice as to how do you go in humbly, even though you have all of this experience and you want to help everybody in the new department, with that knowledge. But how do you go in and do that, like still as a team member without, rocking the boat, so to speak. So I've been leaning on my law enforcement mentors a lot in the past, 6 months to a year to kind of, when I get frustrated, kind of resettle me and bring me back. And I think Chief Myers really pointed on an important topic of accountability, especially when you're, let's say, just even doing 75 hard or some of these other things. One of the biggest things of, keeping you on track is having other people in the community hold you accountable every day to make sure that you're doing those things. And that kind of circles back to the mentorship of well, are you doing what we talked about, last week? Did you try what I asked you to try, in our last conversation and things like that? And then I try to then impart the knowledge that I've learned in the Air Force or in the PDs upon new people coming in, and kind of use the excuse of well, my mentor, told me this, or my mentor, suggested that I do this, and I didn't want to do it then either, but it's really been helpful, down the line. So
thanks. I was wondering, this is kind of like a no-brainer question, but is it difficult? Is it a struggle to be a mentor? Not that I've never been a mentor in my life, but I don't feel like I have nearly the experience that you guys have. I don't know, you don't want to say the wrong thing to them and screw up their life or something.
I don't think you might be putting too much pressure on it. It just sort of happens naturally. When you're a leader, people are going to naturally follow you anyway. And, like Chief Meyer said, we don't always make the right decisions. I mean, I made a pretty poor decision a few years ago that could have cost me my law enforcement career, and really just made a conscious effort to to lean on my mentors that didn't let me skate around, that incident at all, take ownership of it, and then keep going. And I think if you want to be a mentor, it's more of just sort of being available for the other person. Like I said earlier, Chief Sullivan always answered my calls, returned my texts, made time for me. And that's really what it kind of boils down to, is being there for the other person. And then the mentorship evolves into a bigger thing through that relationship.
Sure.
Yeah, I'll just add to what Sergeant Princi just add. When you say You feel like you may not have as much experience as us in life, and life is a teacher, right? You cannot substitute life experiences. You can't substitute those things for anything academically, right? Whether it's PhD, master's, but life is the greatest teacher, first and foremost. But you mentor your fellow airmen, right? By simply providing them with information and knowledge that they may not have. Something as simple as, I wish someone had mentored me, my first term about the TSP program, right?
Yeah.
No one did it. I didn't have a mentor. All of these more seasoned, older airmen that were tech sergeants, master sergeants, no one said to me, hey, Kevin, regardless of how much or how important you think your drill check to you is as a college student, put 10% of it in TSP now, right? And so I went my, probably first 6 years of not investing in TSP until I had someone like Master Sergeant Pesta come into my path to now introduce and expose me to those things. So yes, life is a great teacher for you to be a mentor to someone else. However, it is not, there are no defined barriers regardless when it comes to mentoring, because sometimes it's just information sharing or providing knowledge and information. So mentoring, it has no limits. And so life experience will teach you and allow you to share, just like I share my story about why I actually got in. At the same time, it crosses all ranks. It crosses years of service. It crosses time and grade. Mentoring is mentoring.
Anybody can. Oh,
like,
go ahead.
Calm seas don't make, an experienced captain, right? So, I mean, you learn from your mistakes. My grandfather always said, like, all the mistakes that you have in your life, they've led you to where you are now. So for me, my career went very slowly. Like I said, it took a year before I went to BMT, a year and a half before I got to tech school, another 6 months before I did my mess days. So that initial 3 or 4 years went really slowly, but that's not even a mistake, right? But it's just the way the military goes. But that gave me the opportunity now where new guys come in underneath me. I can understand their frustrations and struggles with the clearance coming in slow. I can help them because I didn't do DTS properly the first time. Now I can help somebody else with DTS. So it's not as maybe big as you're projecting it to be, on the greater scale. It's the little things that add up to the overall relationship and then, helping them along the way.
Yeah, it comes down to a basic tenet of airmanship. And one of our most basic aspects of being a good airman is being a good wingman. And I think that's a lot of what being a good mentor is too, is never letting anybody fly alone. Even people you don't know or have that deep invested relationship with, you can provide them with some guidance and some mentoring and vice versa. And Airman Skouroulis, you said that you don't know what kind of a mentor you are. How many times have I been in the PA office the last year and a half, and you have come up with something or said something to me, and I've gone, oh, wow, that's freaking great. That is awesome. I mean, it's just, it blows my mind how much I've learned from you. And that's mentorship in its essence. I appreciate you so much because of what you've taught me. And it just builds that bond. And that's the bond that we as warriors have with each other. One question I've wanted to ask for a while in a lot of these episodes is I wanted to ask both guests what was the worth of staying in the military over the years. But unfortunately, our enlisted person that we've usually had has been a first-term airman, and they haven't really been up on that challenge. But I have two people here, one who is now in their second term as an airman, you, Sergeant Princi, and Chief Myers, you with 20 plus years in service. And I want to bring this up because I remember having conversations with you, Sergeant Princi, where you were contemplating whether you even wanted to stay in for a second term. And I want to know how has that changed for you over the last couple of years? What drove you to reenlist, and how is that changing you? What is the value of having stayed in? So, starting with you, Staff Sergeant Princi.
Initially, I sort of got into the military to try and get like the quote unquote vet status to get into federal law enforcement. So I aged out of that possibility pretty quickly. And so then, like I sort of like used the Air Force to get a free master's degree, which then got me a raise at my first PD and, still got me a pretty good raise at my second PD. So, after my first enlistment, my sort of goals, I guess, for that enlistment, I accomplished them. I got to the rank that I wanted to get by my first enlistment. Well, actually, I think Tech Sergeant was originally my goal for the first enlistment. However, because everything got delayed initially, that got pushed out a little bit. But, I think what really changed my mind was that I went on orders October 1 to April 1 of last year into this year. And just my experience of working in the DSO and with Master Sergeant Chase and the missions that we do at our unit, I really like that aspect. And I really love my new leadership within F-Flight and E-Flight and F-Flight for life. We basically call it at this point. It's just so positive, and for me, my first PD was not a positive experience for me, right? So the Air Force gave me this sort of like reprieve from that. And then coming on orders during those 6 months, where I got to experience that every day. Now it was a little different because we were on like COVID work schedules and things like that. But the overall environment where, when I was working, people of much higher rank than me, colonels, lieutenant colonels, majors, captains, they're always at my desk. And every time they would leave, the crew would be like, don't you get nervous, with all these higher ups always at your desk? And I'm like, I don't think so, because we're all just working to the same mission. Like our goal is all the same. And I'd like to think, trust that I'm, doing my job correctly, that then influences the overall mission for our group. And so I just really thrived in that environment. And I really felt like the people that we have at the 102nd is, I guess, I would say like kept me around for another enlistment. So I signed on for another 6 in April of this year. So. And
it won't be your last.
Let's hope not.
Right. Already proclaiming it. Yeah, for me, as I listen to Sergeant Princi, and it allows my thoughts to churn in my head, I'll be honest, the thing that has kept me in the military, next month, 24 years, way past what I initially intended, literally has been mentorship. And the reason why I say mentorship is because when I initially got in, as many of us do, not all, but many of us get in without a sense of purpose, right? Without a sense of why we are really doing this, right? We all get in for our own personal or, reasons, or we're legacy. And I didn't have that, right? I didn't have a long lineage or history of military members in my family. And so for me, as I reflect in this conversation, mentorship has been the one of the driving factors that has allowed my purpose to be born, number one, and then number two, for it to evolve over 24 years. Because my purpose hasn't stayed the same. Before I became a first sergeant, I was just trying to be the best NCO I could be, right? And learn the job of aviation resource management and becoming the NCOIC of the squadron arms office. And then after that, someone saying to me, hey, you would probably do really well as a first sergeant and you should consider applying, right? So the individuals that have come through my path who have mentored me have been, part of the driving factor to help me evolve my purpose throughout my career. Because what my purpose is now as a Chief Master Sergeant, the Command First Sergeant of the Air National Guard, isn't the same when I was the Senior Master Sergeant, First Sergeant of the Air National Guard Readiness Center, or when I was the Wing First Sergeant at the 172nd Airlift Wing. So mentorship is in my opinion, that important, because when you have individuals or groups of people who mentor you, whether they're the same rank, older, officer, or enlisted, when those individuals plant and help you see things that you couldn't see yourself, then that helps your purpose to evolve. And so for me, it's been, part of the catalyst that has kept me in for almost 24 years, is because they've helped me understand that my purpose evolves and it is continuously growing and changing as opportunities present themselves to me to now go explore and potentially lead in different capacities of our Air National Guard and Air Force. So mentorship is critically important to help us understand what our purpose is and how that purpose evolves throughout our career.
And as we tie in what we've been talking about, mentorship, we're looking ahead in the Air Force, and we have new airman leadership qualities that are coming down, new EPR systems, and a new emphasis that was placed on enlisted development. And when you take it all in its context, the biggest selling point that I can give to supervisors at all levels as we look at these changes come about is it's really not a change of any type at all. We're still conducting business the way we've always done business. We are just articulating aspects of key importance and just different areas that we can focus on to mentor others and to be mentored in to meet the vision of the Air Force of the 21st century moving forward, so we can accelerate change and win and move forward. So one of the biggest things, one of the biggest key components in at least as I see it, in moving forward with a successful Air Force of the future is the topic that we've been talking about all day today, being a mentor, mentoring others, and in being able to be mentored. I think that is the key to our success. I just had one more question for both of you, and that's, what are you working on now? Give me one project or one thing that you are working on now, either in the military or Staff Sergeant Princi, in your case, in the police department, that you're working on now, either self-development or to develop others.
So one of the things that I've been really focusing on in my new job is the community development and engagement. It wasn't as accepted in my old PD. The community didn't really enjoy our presence, I would say, at different events. Whereas the community that I'm in now, it's my hometown, so I'm more familiar with it. But also they're more accepting and sort of appreciative of the things that we do. So I've been trying to, get on my cruiser and play like catch with the kids. I keep meeting my new like little friends, I call them, in town. And I started like a birthday list of when their birthdays are and swinging by the house with like a $5 gift card to CVS and some candy or something. And just like stopping by their house after school to hang out and play, because when I grew up, I saw the law enforcement in our community as like a positive thing. And I want to have that same sort of effect on the kids now. So just like I took over their Facebook page for the PD. So wanting to have like more positive interaction with the community there. And then just with the kids. So they see me as Officer Michelle or even just Michelle. And they know that if anything happens, they always have somebody that's sort of on their side to reach out to.
Excellent. What about you, Chief? What's on the hopper?
Yeah, the one big thing since I've been in this position and having the opportunity to work in the office of the command chief, shoulder to shoulder with him, is how do we continue to grow our first sergeants across the 90 wings and 54 states, territories, and the District of Columbia into strategic advisors. Across many of our wings and our Air National Guard enterprise, we still have some old school thoughts and or perspectives about what a first sergeant's role is or is not. And so as we get to travel with the command chief of the Air National Guard, the ability to plant seeds in first sergeants, the ability to plant seeds in chiefs and or senior enlisted leaders throughout wings has given me the ability and the platform to help reshape that thought process and perspective. Chief Sullivan, you were first sergeant, and you and I would go to national, worldwide first sergeant conferences, workshops, trainings, and some of the stories or some of the stories we would hear from other first sergeants about some of the challenges that they were either having or faced with by not being included in their triad, or their commanders and or chiefs or superintendents not trusting them. But when you start looking at national level documents, whether it's from Secretary of Defense Austin or General C.Q. Brown, the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, or Chief Bass, and so on and so forth down the line to General Hokanson, the Chief of the National Guard Bureau. When you start looking at what their goals, visions are for our Air Force, Space Force, National Guard, we have to understand specifically the role of first sergeants play in assisting, aiding, implementing, utilizing, executing. The role that a first sergeant plays is critically and vitally important to that. So my biggest challenge over this time that I've been in this position is reshaping thought processes and growing the level of understanding and or knowledge that our first sergeants are strategic advisors within the units, organizations that they serve in, and that they are there to, as a part of that triad, to bring value and to counsel that commander and that chief on any and everything that is going on in that unit. So just continuing that drive and that mission to grow our first sergeants into strategic advisors within our Air Force.
I agree with you on that, Chief. We did see some things, and the one thing I want to put out to all leaders at the highest level that may be listening to this podcast is this: your people will only consider something of value and importance if you make it something of value and importance. And that's the thing that changed the 102nd around to a position where the first sergeant was elevated to such a position of importance through our leadership over the last 15 years, that when we have a vacancy for a first sergeant, it's not uncommon for us to get 8, 9, 10 applicants. And it's not like, 8, 9, or 10 people that are just like, hey, yeah, I want a master's stripe. I'm away out the door as a consolation prize. No, these are mentored, developed leaders that it's painstakingly agonizing process trying to decide, who is going to be recommended or highly recommended to a commander for interviews. And that's how we do it. We highly recommend. And a commander at times has interviewed 6 applicants trying to find the right one. So for all those leaders out there at the highest levels, if you place the value on this position, this force multiplying strategic advising position, it will grow. So thanks, Chief. Again, near and dear to my heart, first sergeanting. Airman Skidoulis, did you have anything else you wanted to ask?
No, that was it. I was just going to ask for last thoughts from our wonderful guests. Staff Sergeant Princi, any last thoughts for our listeners?
My last thought is for you, actually, when you were worried about being a mentor. I would argue this whole podcast that you and Chief Sullivan started is mentoring people. You might not even know it, but just the content that you guys are putting out and making available to our airmen that might not otherwise think they have an outlet or wonder if they're alone in these things that they're thinking. I mean, putting this out and having this as something that people can turn to is awesome. So I appreciate you guys and I appreciate your time.
Thank you. Chief Myers?
Yeah, first and foremost, thank you for the invitation to have this opportunity to have a conversation. and to share my thoughts and perspective. You all are making a dynamic duo. On my Spotify, I have the notification turned on when a new episode comes out. So I know when a new episode drops because it gives me a little notification and it stays green until I open my Spotify app. And so I do go in and listen to the different guests that you all have and the different conversations that you all are putting out in the stratosphere for our Air National Guard Airmen and even Total Force. So thank you all for that. I really, really appreciate it. And it has been an honor to have this conversation and humbling. And so here's what I'll leave you all with and the audience as well. Mentorship is vitally important, and we must be deliberate in order to execute and answer the action items of accelerate, change, or lose that General C.Q. Brown has put out. And even the vision and the mission of the tags of all of our states, territories, and the District of Columbia, the vision that they have for their airmen, and the ATAGs as well. But 2 points I'll leave on the topic of mentorship. I think mentorship starts with two things. And in order for anyone to be successful at mentoring, I think these two are a must. It starts with trust. Do your airmen trust you, first and foremost, to either give them advice, to hear their story, for them to be vulnerable with you, and pour into their lives? Number one. Number two, once they trust you, then they will give you permission to pour into them, permission to plant in them, permission to give them advice, permission to hold them accountable, permission to critique them, permission to counsel them. So those two things go hand in hand, in my opinion, in order for us to be mentors, to be deliberate mentors of airmen that are either above us, equal to us, or below us in rank and experience and things like that. So I hope if there's anything that I can leave and plant with anyone, if you are mentoring others, you have to ensure that you have those two things, in my opinion, and trust first, and then once you have that airman's trust, they will give you permission to pour into their lives.
Thank you very much for both of your perspectives on everything that we talked about. I appreciate you both so much, and thank you again for being guests.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Really appreciate you all here and taking the time, and everybody listening, stay tuned for the next one. Thank you.